and welcome to the CineSkinny. It's the film podcast from the team behind the Skinny magazine, and we're in a new gaff. We are in ground floor, the new EHFM studio on Junction Street. It's me, Jamie Dunn,
hello,
Ellie Robertson,
hello,
and Anahit Baruz.
Hello.
Ellie and Anahit are in a little alcove.
It's like soft furnishing as well. It's like a little spongy.
It's really nice.
It's slumber party core. Me and Jamie are outside in the cars waiting for them to come out.
I'll be honest with you. This is not going to be a selfless thing where everyone this is my seat. I will be
Oh
sitting
no,
here.
I got that right.
Yeah, okay. As long as we're clear.
So we are back on it with another episode of this podcast that we do. We're going to be talking about the new Alien film. We're going to be talking about the new Kneecap film. We're going to be recapping some of the things that we've been up to this August, and we're going to be doing some other little bits as well, probably on the way, I presume. I mean, it's quite loose. It's the podcast you listen to. You know what it's like. You know what we are like. 7 minutes 25. That's all I'm going to say to you. But before we get started, we need to plug the next round of CineSkinny Film Club screenings with Móglaí. We are putting one of the best films of 2024, La Chimera, the Alice Rohrwacher film with Josh O'Connor, back in the cinema in early September. So there's a screening on Tuesday the 3rd of September at Summer Hall, and a screening on Wednesday the 4th of September at CCA in Glasgow. They're both free. theskinny.co.uk/tickets. Come and see a very, very good film on a big screen. You'll have a grand old time, and it's free. So just come, it's free.
I mean,
it's
everyone's skint right now, aren't they?
Exactly, it's free and it's good. Don't say we're not good to you. I hear you saying it.
Stop it.
I've said too much. Right. Cool, so a quick run round. First thing in the new gaff, bit of chat. What's everyone been watching? I'll come to Jamie first. I'm going to have to come to him shortly afterwards anyway. So Jamie, what have you been watching? Anything good?
Well, this is a while ago, but I saw Longlegs. Has anybody seen that yet?
No, is it any good?
Well, I'm about to tell you.
I'm excited.
Shut
I'm
up,
literally
Ellie.
on the edge of my seat.
He's busy.
You know what?
He's talking.
You know what? What's the phrase? Le plus échange. 2 minutes in and Jamie's already like, well, that's what I want to tell you.
This has been hyped to hell, and I was actually really excited to see it. Also, it's directed by Osgood Perkins, which is probably the coolest name for any director, I think. And he's actually quite a good director. I think he really had me. His technique really had me in the palm of his hands. I jumped to all the right bits. I was creeped out throughout. It's a really coolly made, produced, directed film. And Nick Cage is also actually excellent in this, as this kind of deranged character. It's very unique, not what you expect at all from a serial killer movie, but it completely falls apart in the last 20 minutes, and I haven't been so annoyed by a film in a long, long time. It literally makes no sense. It's a kind of fun film to watch because it's actually quite enjoyable to watch, and then afterwards it's quite enjoyable to tear down what a stupid ending it has and how it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I would say go along just to bag on the twist and basically enjoy some creeps before that.
I remember when we went to that Doctor Strange press screening and we had a really good time when we came out all shouting about it. So I can confirm that Jamie is a good person to hang about with when you just watch an absolute turkey, because you do get some good laughs out of it. You feel like your 2 hours haven't been completely wasted. Ellie, what have you got for me?
Well, I think like everybody else, I'm going to be talking mostly about things that I've seen at the Fringe.
We're trapped in festivals mode and we can't get out. We've fallen and we can't get up.
How do you guys feel about whenever you see like a comedy show or something like that, audience participation?
Depends on the audience, I think.
Depends on the participation.
I was like, oh, I really like it. One of my friends was like, yes, you love being the centre of attention.
I hate when I'm picked because I'm sure I'm going to ruin the show. Like, I'm so nervous.
Baby.
I was like picked a recent show that I was actually reviewing, and I don't think I got blacked out for 20 minutes because they just handed me like halfway through like a piece of paper saying this is your role. You have to do it then. It's the climax of the show. Be prepared and listen out for it. And at
a comedy show.
At a comedy show, yeah.
Oh.
I usually am like all up for audience participation, and I think that like a good performer will not ask an audience member to do something that could ruin the show if they do it wrong, right? So it's like when I went to go see Luke Rawlison Let Down Your Hair, which is a very fun sort of clown mime show. He like is a really good performer and utilizes like the energy of the audience and pulls people up to participate in his weird little skits. But people were so belligerent. People were just so slow and like not wanting to participate. And I got really bitter about it because I was like, you're kind of now, messing up the show, right? So I'm always like, they'll never ask you to do anything hard. They'll never ask you to do anything that like you could conceivably fail at. And then I went to go see Demia Dijuibe, who had a great show.
Oh, I'm going tonight.
So the heads up, the two things that he asks audience participation members to do is, number one, with almost no warning, thrust a microphone in your face and ask you to scat. And I feel like he might not pick you for this one, but he does ask some audience members to say, I love racism. As a result of him reinventing racism into racism 2, a much more, healthy and sustainable kind of racism. So at that point I was like, maybe I have preemptively like jumped in on I would do anything in audience participation. I'm not worried at all. But fortunately I wasn't picked. And then I did go and see, it like flipped right back when I went to go see Lil Wenker's like drag cowboy themed cabaret Bangtail, which is this great like little sort of soundscape where the Lil Wenker like picks out loads and loads of audience members to represent each different like little sort of sound bite from a western. Someone's the horse, someone's the saloon doors, and like so many people get involved, and I didn't, and I felt really bitter and really left out. So ultimately I want to be picked for audience participation, but also please God no.
I get that.
But those are 3 good Fringe shows that I've seen.
Kind of like being catcalled.
Or like when when like it's a busy bus and you're like, oh God, nobody better sit next to me, and then no one's sitting next to you. You're like, what the fuck's the matter with me?
Yeah. What's your problem?
It's all right, Ellie. You're safe here with the films. No one's going to ask you to do anything.
The film never reaches out. And
apart from, is it Megapolis? There's got to be some audience participation. You could be the person who goes and shouts at Adam Driver.
Yeah.
Crazy. I cannot wait.
That's something I'm down for.
Okay, so that was some Fringe recommendations. Final weekend, use them if you can. Anahi, what have you got for me?
So, yeah, I've also just really been seeing Fringe stuff. So
Perfect.
I saw Cyrano, was incredible, my favourite thing, but I think it is entirely sold out. Went to Stamptown, that was very fun. It was like more circus than comedy this time, which is like very up my street, so that was great. Burnout Paradise is really, really good. And I got the skinny into Burnout Paradise because one of the things they're doing is they're writing a funding application while on the treadmills. And part of the funding application is like, what media partners do you have to support you? So I like went up and told them that I work at the Skinny, and they were like, this is possibly binding. So that was cute.
As long as you have to write it.
Yeah. So yeah, those are my recommendations. What I am going to say, slightly cinematically, not that I've seen it, but on the Longlegs thing, Oz Perkins, do you know his background?
Oh yeah, he's the grandson of...
No, he's the son.
He's the son, okay.
He's the son of Anthony Perkins and his wife, Barry Berenson.
I don't know.
Yeah. So
That's a fake name.
So they were married for years, but he was
what's
like...
the name? Motherington?
So they were married for years, but he was famously gay.
Yeah.
So she was like his beard. He dies of HIV, I think, in the 90s. She died 10 years later in 9/11.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, that is crazy. But also, think of what's the word missing from Longlegs?
Daddy.
Yeah. So it's basically a film about daddy issues, and there's like a whole thing about like a missing daddy. It's like if you know his, I think there's a lot of him in this story.
Yeah. Like knowing his, I haven't seen it because I can't watch horror films, so I'm like, I bet that's a fucked up film because that is an intense family back. Can you imagine? Anyway, so that's my cinematic offering.
Bringing this thing back on course. No one's going to be able to get a ticket for it, but the Natalie Palamides show Weir is very, very cinematic, actually.
Yeah, I really wanted to go see it.
So it's a two-hander played by one person. It's a rom-com, but it's a kind of dramatic rom-com where she plays both a woman who is dumping her partner on New Year's Eve 1999 and the man who is being dumped on New Year's Eve 1999. And it's absolute chaos. There's props everywhere. It's one of these things where it's absolute chaos, but it's meticulously planned. So everything that is on the stage has a purpose. Everything is in the place it is because that will work for the show. Every interaction is prepared for. Every time you get an audience member involved, like Ellie was alluding to earlier, something is going to happen when that Like they're not just doing crowd work. Natalie Palamides is not running around the Traverse shouting at people for no good reason. She knows why she's there, and you know she knows why she's there.
I think I told you the story. I almost got decapitated at a Natalie Palamides show when I was doing some audience interaction.
Wow, okay, that blew the scatting complaint that I had straight out of the water.
Tell the story.
When she asks you to do things, it's terrifying. But anyway, she dragged me up like straight away. And this was a Nate, her show about 5 years ago, maybe.
Nate was the character. It was like about he was like a little kind of down on his luck guy.
Yeah, she's playing like a really macho guy essentially. And the first opening thing of the show, she drags them to the audience. They have to lie down, and she drives over them with a motorbike and does like a little stunt over them. And I am such a chicken. I flinched so hard when she went over me, and like she was like, "Don't do that." Anyway, she almost hit my head with the bike.
It was an actual motorbike.
It's like a little mini motorbike, like a kid's motorbike, but it was like, I'm sure if it landed on my head, it'd be sore. But anyway, it was basically she drove her a knife. My whole body just flinched as she was driving over me, and I like almost got hit.
Oh my God.
Because I'm a coward. So she picked
No,
up
I would have
person.
also flinched.
Yeah.
But you know what? He's part of the Fringe ecosystem. This man was nearly decapitated by Natalie Palamides, and look at her now.
This is the thing about being like a white man, is you get picked on for comedy stuff, because no one will pick on you if you're not a white man, just in case. Like, I took Jamie Passenger to go and see Sophie Duker, and he was like, we're sitting at the back. We're not sitting anywhere that she could talk to me. He was like, I'm a tall white man, and she'll pick on me. I was like, okay.
There was a very, very funny joke in the Sarah Keyworth show that I went to last night where they said, they were talking about how they've come out as non-binary, and they said, but, I know I'm not trans, because if I was trans, that would mean if I transitioned, that would make me a straight white man. and I don't want that. There's enough of them going round as it is.
That's so funny.
Now we're done plagiarizing comedians' material, shall we move on to the rest of the podcast? Okay, so what we're going to move on to is Jamie Dunn telling us about one of the opening films of the Edinburgh International Film Festival. Now, me and Jamie went to see The Outrun. It was good, but we can't talk about it now because we're going to talk about it later in the fullness of time when everyone's had a chance to see it.
Yes.
That seems like a fair deal. But Jamie saw Alien Romulus, which none of us have seen. So therefore, he is now entrusted with telling us all about it in a comparatively short space of time. Jamie, hit it. Alien Romulus.
Yes.
The 7th or 8th Alien film?
79th, I don't know.
He said, not checking his notes.
Yeah, I think it's the 7th Alien film, but the 9th if you include the Predator films as Alien films.
I have a question about that later, as to why. Why Alien and Predator come together sometimes.
It's non-canon. It's like a... It wasn't
No, it's because in the first Predator film, there's like a trophy case, and one of the trophies is an alien. And I think that's always been the lore, that the Predators have hunted the aliens. And then everybody's been saying, oh my God, how cool would that be to see the aliens hunt the Predator? And then they made the film and everybody hated it. So
yeah, they were like, how cool would that be? Answer, not very.
Alien is set like hundreds of years in the future. Predator is set in, I don't know, the jungle in the 19s.
but
in the 80s.
Yeah,
in the 80s.
Everyone's wearing a vest.
But the aliens are like fantastic beings. They've probably been around forever. Like they're the perfect killing machines. So they're not going to be like, they're going to kind of like Predator. They're so they're essentially a dinosaur, but like in space.
I mean, it also has to be said that Alien vs. Predator was directed by Paul Anderson, brackets, not that one.
Yeah.
Hollywood's second best Paul Anderson.
I actually quite like Alien vs. Predator, but anyway, that's by the by.
Right.
I'm going to talk about Alien Romulus.
Cool.
I quite like this as well. Actually, this film was like...
That's podcasting right there.
This film was like really crucified, I think. People hated it so much. And I can see why. Like it has the same problem of a lot of like the Star Wars films has, and the new Ghostbusters films, is it's got a lot of kind of slavish kind of replays of the best bits of the earlier film. But if you can look over that, I think that it has good stuff. Oh,
sorry.
This is the problem. But I think it's stuck in a little ducat here.
Anna for listeners at home, had wedged herself in to this little kind of cubby hole in the ground floor studio, and then was trying to extricate herself while Jim was in the middle of a sentence. I looked round, and you looked like what happens when you peer out of a window on a really high floor of a building.
My leg was going to sleep. Okay.
Anyway. What was I going to say? Well, I like this. It looks really good. It begins in the kind of mining colony, and if you're a total geek, you'll recognise it's the mining colony from Aliens. Before all the carnage happened, and it looks really grubby and lived in, and like everything's falling apart at the seams. And you're introduced to these kids who are basically indentured labour who work in this mine, and they're not allowed to leave the planet. And that's the kind of setup essentially. And what they do is they're kids. They're a bunch of kids, 18, 19, which is a bit different from alien films. Usually it's like Marines or scientists who are a bit older. So making it about young people was quite interesting. And they have to kind of break into this spaceship that's fallen into orbit, that's abandoned, because they can steal some of the tech which will let them like escape the planet. But of course, as you can probably guess, this abandoned spaceship has an alien on it, or several aliens actually. So anyway, it's like a breaking and entering film, and when it's like that kind of breaking in and like, you know, getting through this set of corridors and like flooded rooms and stuff like that, it's really good, I think, and it does some fun new things I've never seen in an alien film. The cast is a little bit forgettable, I would say. David Johnson is probably the best character. He plays Andy, who's this kind of android. And androids, as you know, are always the best characters in the alien films, pretty much. He's a bit more interesting because he's like a defective android who gets an upgrade halfway through. So he starts off as this kind of slow character, then he becomes like really sharp and very useful to the team, but then his morals kind of change because of that, which again is like, so there's a lot of kind of moral questions kicking around. So it's really good, but unfortunately it decides that the last half an hour is going to be the same half hour from Alien Resurrection, which no one liked the first time round, so I don't know why they copied it. They bring in characters from the original films to explain the original film to these characters, which is bad as it would be, but they bring back a dead person, like a dead actor, like using CGI, and it's just horrible. It's just like, it's every scene with that just like puts you off, and it's just an exposition dump, so it just stops the action as well. So from every angle it's bad. Yeah, and you know, so like it's a mixed bag. I think it's better than the Ridley Scott films. I found it more tense, a better kind of alien kind of action horror, but it's it feels like it's like the geeks have ruined everything essentially. No film can be good because we have to like give all these little Easter eggs, so like the person who's wearing the kind of alien jumper down the front knows the reference. Like, nobody really cares. So it could have been a good film if they took all that out, I think. But otherwise, it's just a very average alien film.
Where does it sit in between all the other alien films?
Well, the first, it's not as good as the first three.
Yeah,
but it's better than Ridley Scott, and it's probably on par with like Resurrection, I would say.
So wait, what are the? Because there's Aliens, and
Aliens.
Alien 3.
Alien 3, directed by David Fincher.
Alien
yes.
Cubed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cubed.
It's like a little 3 next.
And that one's good as well. I've only ever seen Aliens, I will say.
I
do want to see Alien, but I am too scared to watch it by myself.
I mean, Aliens is pretty scary as well.
Yeah, I watched it with my horrible ex-boyfriend, so I was fine.
Okay. Anyway, Alien Romulus is out now. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that, Jamie. That was a lively chat about Alien.
You're welcome.
I realised that we cut off at a good point to end that segment, but then I thought it was rude if I just cut you off and then started talking about something completely different. So I thought I would be nice, but I was still doing my presenting voice, so it seemed facetious.
Do you want to give a letterbox rating, Jamie?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a 3. It's like pretty good film despite itself. Like, despite its like, I mean, I think Fede Alvarez, who's the director, is really good. Like, really good director. He made Don't Breathe from a few years ago, and I feel like when it resembles Don't Breathe, which is essentially a break and entering film, like kids up to no good who get a bit of a comeuppance, when it resembles that, it's excellent. So, but yeah, unfortunately, it has that terrible last half hour, and all the redacted character from Aliens who comes back.
Lovely stuff. Sounds fine. Yeah. It sounds aggressively mid.
If you see a plane, you'd probably be quite happy.
Cool.
Do they show scary? Don't show scary films on planes, do they?
No, they don't. No, that would be crazy. Could you imagine? Locking people up in like a tube and then being like, live your worst nightmare.
Yeah, showing Alien on a plane. It's like we've locked everyone in a tube and then we're going to bring them all dinner.
Yeah.
Somebody starts choking.
Oh no!
My God. Open the air door.
Yeah, it's the doctor on board or someone with an enormous gun and for some reason a cat. Okay, and the main event for this week, which is Kneecap, which is the new sort of like autobiography slash biopic slash semi-fictionalized origin story slash self-hagiography by the West Belfast hip-hop band Kneecap. So Liam and Naoise are two Irish-speaking guys hanging out in West Belfast, drinking, doing loads of drugs, and generally having a fun party time. But then they have a kind of chance encounter after one of them gets in trouble with the law. They have a chance encounter with this music teacher called JJ, and after a bit of chat and a bit of back and forth, they end up forming this Irish language rap group that draws soon like everyone is into them, from like kind of dissident Republican groups to the police to everyday speakers of Irish and people in Ireland who are looking for a fun, cool, and extremely, how do I put this, energetic. The World Anti-Doping Agency would have a fucking field day with these boys. So they end up with all these fans and admirers and followers, and chaos quickly ensues. It's directed by Rich Pepiat, who's been embedded with the band from very, very early on. I listened to some interviews and they were saying that he kind of got involved with them at very early doors in their musical career. And the interesting thing about this film is that the band actually play themselves. So it's Liam O'Hana, Naoise O'Carolan and JJ O'Doherty, who are respectively Chara, Móglaí and DJ Próvai, are playing themselves in this, as I say, semi-autobiographical, semi-fictionalized, mostly true, largely embellished story of the rap group Kneecap. I saw Kneecap at Glastonbury on one of the times I was bunking off this podcast. And they were really good, incredibly energetic, very like politically vocal, very vocally vocal, very loud. And it was at 11:30 in the morning, and the tent they were in was absolutely heaving. So they clearly have an enormous and devoted following in Ireland and beyond.
Did they have Brits out on their arse?
No, they had it in massive writing on the screens.
Did they throw out free drugs to people like sweets?
No, that I believe is a dramatic embellishment for the film. But yeah, and I mean, if you've seen Kneecap live, you've seen any footage of them live, their live shows are a bit of a whirlwind, and Ellie, I think it's fair to say that the film follows broadly the same pattern and tone of a drugged up whirlwind full of political angst and everyday life for young people.
Correct.
What a weird way to end that sentence on young people.
Yeah,
like
that's the spirit of the band.
Like a cool minister. Ellie, save me from myself.
I mean, it is. It's a really mad film, but it's a really lovely film. It's like very intelligently written, and it's sort of about. It's a very good multilingual film, and I feel like we've only just had another good multilingual film with Crossing, which is in Turkish, Georgian. But this is more like a film about multilingualism, and by multilingualism, post-colonialism, right? Like, it's got this like very straightforward political leaning, but you're right, it's full of these like embellishments to the band's story, these semi-autobiographical elements, and you know, that results in this like very kind of cool, gritty Western structure where there's a bunch of different sort of factions all out to get each other, but there's also some like great comedic moments, and yeah, like that's all just, you know, forming like there are threads of truth to it, right? Kneecap did get together as a result of, or like following the day of a march for the legal recognition of Irish as a language in Northern Ireland. Like that's confirmed lore. But this film in particular, which like I say, has got this sort of like epic trend to it. It's sort of tying together this old guard of like philosophical Irish Republicans, the sort of thing that you think of with 20th century Ireland, with like shifting attitudes of a new generation of like souped up youths. Or in other words, it's like a great film if your side chick is the gorgeous and proud nation of Ireland, or you're just a bam on ketamine. Like, it's funny, which makes sense because the band is funny, right? But like, you know, don't underestimate the fact that it's actually very difficult to transpose a stage persona to the screen, right? So it's like, a lot of the humor in the film is in its editing. Like there's a scene where one of the band members snatches the baton out of the hands of an orangeman and like runs away saying Rangers are shite. But it's sort of filmed in slow motion really dramatically, like Chariots of Fire or something like that. And yet these people who, this is their debut acting performance, are like working really well with that kind of like broader post-production-y sense of humor, or like this sort of comedic thread of one of them, Liam, I think it is having this affair with a Protestant unionist woman, and their dirty talk is just like sectarian discourse. But at the same time, it's like shot in a very funny way. It's like, very like fast paced back and forth to like make clear this isn't an actual like intimate scene or anything. And they, the boys do like a very good job of fitting into that sort of more filmic humor. So there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of like collaboration going on both in the screen and like behind the camera as well, because the director, I think, wrote the film despite not speaking Irish. Incredible to write an Irish language film when you don't speak Irish yourself. And also, like, Michael Fassbender's there, and he's pretty good. Like, I last saw Michael Fassbender in that Taika Waititi one about the American Samoan football team, and it was really weird because, like a lot of Taika Waititi films, there's like an atmosphere of complete non-seriousness all around. Like, this is the guy who did Jojo Rabbit where Hitler was a clown. But like Michael Fassbender in Next Goal Wins plays it like a dramatic sports biopic, and it's so weird to get on his tone, but like, I think that this film here, Kneecap, has more of a like serious point at its heart, that Michael Fassbender's like, incredible stoic, growling, sort of haggard face actually fits in really well and helps take us down from the more comedic moments into the sincere political points that it's trying to make. And yeah, like there are these really well executed, quite beautifully written moments, which do kind of, I think, move it above a sort of pseudo biopic that acts as a promotional element for the band into like an actual film that has something to say about the role of the Irish language in like contemporary Ireland.
Yeah, I also think we kind of borrowed the lead a bit on Michael Fassbender's involvement in this film. And I'm going to just borrow someone's Letterboxd review where they just say that Michael Bender at one point hits the after sun pose absolutely perfectly. So when you've seen it, come back, because you'll know that that's actually a quite funny joke. Anahi, what did you think of this film?
Yeah, I really liked it. I don't know that much about Kneecap. I know like some friends that went to like some of their gigs. I kind of know generally about their vibe, but never really listened to their music. And I really loved that this was actually a lot more about, like you were saying, Ellie, the Irish language and the politics of like Ireland, much more than it is like about the band. I like that they took their story and also people around them, their story. I think some of the stuff that happens in this film actually didn't happen specifically to these guys, but kind of like bring it like this whole like mythology around the band and use it to kind of think about like the politics of identity really and how that stuff is formed and the relationship between like nationhood and language, which is really interesting, right? Like that idea of I think there was like, what was it? There was a quote at the end maybe about like, God, what did it say? About like needing language to like build a nation, and how it's interesting to think how historically that has actually been done often in quite like nationalist ways. So like that was a whole thing in Germany, and then the ways that can kind of be a form of resistance with like an indigenous language that's like dying out. So like it kind of deals with these like quite complicated ideas in a really interesting way, in that it's just quite mental as a film. So like the stuff that it's dealing with is like so profoundly like historic and monumentous. But yeah, it's filmed in like this really playful, really anarchic way. I thought the use of subtitles, again, like thinking about it as a film about like language, is really, really interesting, because subtitles keep appearing in quite like disruptive and defiant ways. And I think the film has like a little bit of a fuck you if you don't speak Irish, which is kind of fair enough. And I like that attitude that it has. And yeah, like the camera work is really interesting. There's this like magical realist bit. There's a bit like that bit in Booksmart where they turn into dolls. Like it's kind of playing with things in like quite a like fun way. I thought it was really interesting, their whole like stance on drugs and just like how pro-drugs that band is, in a way that is like kind of sick, but also just like a little bit annoying. It's like, okay, babe, we get it. Like you do whomst among us, like, you know, like we get it. Okay. But I kind of liked that they took that to such an extreme in the film, that it's not just, which is kind of what they did in their music as well, right? That it's like, yeah, they're throwing out like drugs at a concert, which I'm sure didn't actually happen. So I thought that kind of just like absolutely fuck the system, who like we have freedom in art to do and say things that otherwise we wouldn't have. I thought that was really fun. So it was also very sexy, but I like anarchy, so I was predisposed.
Yeah, I think the thing about the drug stuff is quite interesting, because it brings in, it makes it much more of it makes it a really well-rounded story, because you sense that there are people who are annoyed at them on all sides.
Yeah.
And that they are like disruptive in the purest sense, in that no one really likes what they're doing except the people who really like what they're doing.
Yeah.
So they have, and they've talked a lot about this in interviews out of character when the characters themselves. And they talked about, just in like press interviews, about the idea that they are doing rap music that is in Irish because they're Irish. They're not doing like Irish trad music. They're not doing music that is necessarily about like, we are doing this as like a powerful, but to use the Jerry Adams voice, powerful political statement. It's like, we are making the music that we want, and part of that is political, but also part of that is about, you know, loving to go out and party at the weekends. Part of that is about what it means to be a young man growing up in like West Belfast, where you've got like multiple different intersecting forms of like deprivation and inter-community trouble and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's a difficult place to grow up and a difficult situation to find yourself in, and their music is a reflection of how they feel about that. But they often have had people try to either like stop them from doing it, or people try to like almost like glom onto it and like assign something to it that it sometimes isn't. And I think that they are a very kind of like defiant band in terms of putting out what they want to put out, and that is a mixture of like serious political insight and also songs about humping and doing loads and loads of drugs. Jamie, I mean, it takes all sorts, to be honest. Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I was most impressed with the filmmaking, actually. Like, it's just completely confident, like, for a first-time filmmaker. I don't know if it's like quite in control all the time of the narrative, but it's completely in control of like the style and the tone. Like, it seems like it knows exactly what it wants to be. I love how it opens like by just completely subverting the cliches of like Belfast films, you know. So it opens with this kind of montage of like old news footage of the Troubles and the IRA bombings and stuff, but it's over in like 3 seconds, and it's like, that's not this film. And then, you know, the first, it just hits the ground running, and it knows exactly what it wants to be. You know, which is basically just like an anti-British, anti-colonialist, pro-drug, you know, celebration of being young, you know, but it has really good politics, and it's just saying fuck you to the authorities. It's been compared to like things like Trainspotting, and I can see that comparison. It does have that kind of boisterous buzz about it, but the thing about Trainspotting is actually quite conservative when you think of its opinion on drugs. Like, it does have to have the come down, and there's no come down in this. It's like all up, and it, like, I was waiting for like, oh, where's the kind of like, you know, that's usually the narratives. There used to be like, there has to be a fall before you have your success, but this is just all success. They just become like really successful overnight, and there's no kind of like suggestion that they won't be.
It is the rarely seen critically acclaimed and fun to watch hagiography. It's a film that's made by them, about them, and the topic is we are great. And everyone's, we're great, we're legends, we sometimes get in trouble, but we always get out of it, and everyone's like, bravo.
Yeah, but like I say, I think it's just so confident and funny, and like it's got such a good pace. It's actually quite poetic as well. Like, I think their songs are quite poetic, but like or the raps, I guess, are quite poetic. But like, there's like little poetic moments in the film as well. Like, I love the kind of scene where they taunt the Orangeman, and it's like, but it's just shot really beautifully. It's got really kind of like, I think it probably has too many. If I was being critical, it's too many antagonists and too many subplots. Like, I don't know if we needed the you've got the coppers after them, or what do they call the coppers?
Peelers.
The peelers are after them. But there's also the RRAD, the RAD, who are these kind of radical Republicans against drugs.
Which is this thing that does happen in has happened in Northern Ireland, where like, as a lot of like paramilitary groups have got out of straight paramilitary stuff, they've just moved into drugs, either pro or anti. But as is revealed in the film, sometimes if you're anti, you're anti in quotation marks.
Yeah. So like, I mean, I just think there was maybe a bit too much going on, and then you've got the subplot about like Nisha's dad, who's like Michael Fassbender, who's this kind of like underground, perhaps dead, perhaps not, like IRA bomber. I feel like maybe one of those could have came out and the film would have been better. Like, I feel it was just like, there's a few moments where I felt like, hold on a minute, this needs to slow down. The film is just a bit too fast. It maybe needs a few moments to breathe. But, you know, like, it's like I say, it definitely wants to be this kind of rush of a film, and it does it like perfectly. You know, I think the music is also great. Like, I agree, Peter. Like, is it Hood or HOOD is a total banger. Is it Powerful is a really good song as well. And I also like how they're like, you think, oh, you know, they shoot them in such interesting ways that each performance doesn't feel boring. Like they find a new visual language each time. All the songs are performed and presented in a slightly different way. So yeah, it's a film that just knows what it's doing, and it's like just quite impressive as a piece of filmmaking. And yeah, the politics are cool as fuck. It's a celebration of being young. Drugs are cool. You know, I always say that. I feel I always say this every podcast recording, but see it with an audience. I feel like if you watch this with a big group of people, it would be so much fun, you know.
Yeah.
You know that like Lord of the Rings watching party idea where whenever they eat, you eat, and you eat what they're eating.
Oh god!
You could do this.
Oh my god!
You would just eat an entire sheet of acid and more ketamine than I've ever seen in one place in my entire life.
Emily, who has written for the magazine as well, who works with us at the magazine and is Irish, went to a preview screening of Kneecap last night as we're recording and said that it was incredible with an audience. Just like loads of energy, everyone's laughing, especially I think if you go and see it. I would say, to be honest, if you go and see this film on the opening weekend in Edinburgh or Glasgow, you will be with a friendly crowd, let's put it that way. The Irish diaspora among the students of Edinburgh and Glasgow will be out watching this film, drinking cans in the back of the cinema this weekend. So go this weekend, you'll have an amazing time.
How well it will go down in England, I do not know, but it's certainly, it's anti-British. I love it. It's just like unashamedly.
I really don't think that Kneecap care. I think as well, like, it's really funny that one of the gambits that they've pulled with this is that they brought it out in Ireland a week before it came out in the rest of like Great Britain. So it's been out in Ireland for a week and it's coming out in the Forbidden Island this weekend.
This is another thing I loved about it as well. It's like so specific. Like I feel like so often when we make a film in Scotland, we feel like we have to like rub off the Scottish edges so that it can go out to like America and England and places like that and sort of like not be as specific as it would be, but like here, like there's so many references to like very specific places in Belfast and like specific references to like Irish politics that if in sort of phrases that unless I know them because I live in Glasgow where sectarianism is unfortunately rife, but like if you don't know that history, it doesn't care. It's just going to like put out there as well. So I think it would be useful if you knew a bit of Irish history to go before you go along to see it, I would say.
Yeah, or even like terminology, I think. I always feel a little bit, but then I'm not actually English, so it's actually fine. But with my accent, I am like, what is Próvai? I was like Googling it.
I mean, you still enjoy it. It's like a really fun
You still get it, and you can put it together. But definitely, I had to. There were a few things where I was like, oh, I see, like that's.
But there was loads of stuff that I heard that I like learned for the first time from watching this film. So if you do go see it in an audience, you can't exactly like pull up your phone and Google what they're saying. But like, I did appreciate, because I mean, loads of like part of the film, and I think that like something they discuss in the film is that people start to learn, their fans start to learn the Irish language because they love the music so much. So I wonder what kind of impact this film will have if it becomes like really viral on people willing to learn more about the Irish language or Irish culture.
Yeah, and I think it's a counterbalancing to the idea that English people will make films about English things. And actually, you know what? Fucking Americans are the worst for it. I'm sorry. But when American filmmakers make films about things in America and just act like everyone else, and literally everyone else in the world has to know and care about like the specifics of regional American geography and customs and things like that. So I don't give a fuck, to be perfectly honest with you. And the Kneecap film is the I don't give a fuck. You'll find out about Irish history by watching this film that you've come to see.
Exactly, I love it. Yeah.
And also, like, want to just give a last shout out to the three guys in the band, Liam, Naoise, and JJ O'Doherty in particular. JJ O'Doherty's performance as the school teacher who basically is fed up with his life as a school teacher and becomes the DJ and like kind of beat maker for this band, and then has to try and hide it from his partner whilst also embracing the guys in the band. I'm not exaggerating, it's one of the best performances I've seen in a film this year.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Really funny.
Yeah, really funny, like really natural. It's like real range as well. It's one thing to be convincing as yourself. As they said in an interview I listened to the other day, it's the role of our lifetimes. So like you've been preparing for it the whole time, but to be able to actually portray something that's like these things that have happened in your life with genuine dramatic range opposite professional actors and hold your own. I felt that they kind of did Naoise a bit dirty when they put him to do a dramatic scene directly opposite Michael Fassbender. It's a little bit like asking somebody to like race Usain Bolt home from the shops. Like, you know the way, but I think he's going to get there first. So yeah, but just a really, really good film, as will be evidenced by our letterboxd ratings. Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, what did I give? Maybe 4.5. It was a really... It's not like a perfect film. It's like a bit rough around the edges, but it's so charming, so fun. Yeah, watching it, the enjoyment of watching it is 4.5. Maybe it's a 4 overall, in retrospect, if we did that.
Nice. So a 4, we're going with. Just a 4.
Yeah,
or is this like a high? It's a
God's
fucking high 4
sake.
situation.
I'll give it a 4.
Cool. Ellie?
Give it a 4.5. Yeah.
Next, a 4.5.
4.
I also think it's a 4. I think it's very, very good. I think that it's a breakneck speed, somewhat like it's like an extremely fast endurance test, but it is brilliant, really good fun, and it is out across the cursed island of Great Britain and Ireland from this weekend. So go and check it out. It's Kneecap. It's great. And in honour of Kneecap's rebellion against the hated English and their embrace of the Irish language, and also of doing things that the regular everyday cops don't like, brackets, drugs, fighting, running around screaming, we decided we want to talk a bit about films about rebellions and resistance, a much ploughed cinematic furrow from C-3PO to the hot Robin Hood Foxman. There's been rebellion throughout the history of cinema, and now we're going to talk about some specific instances now. Annie, shockingly, is not going to talk about the fox from Robin Hood. You're going to talk about something else.
Although I have opinions on that. I am going to talk about Nae Pasaran, which is a 2018 documentary by a Chilean-Belgian, I believe, director called Felipe Bustos Sierra. And it's a documentary about a group of workers at a Rolls-Royce factory in East Kilbride, I think, who basically went on strike and refused to make the parts that were needed for the fighter planes during Pinochet's coup and takeover and general terrible dictatorship. And their refusal to work in this factory was a really, really monumentous thing. It really crippled the Chilean Air Force in a way that they denied at the time, but then was revealed was actually a really big kind of crippling of their military. And it's just, I don't know, I love films about solidarity. I find them really, really moving. I really love, even, in a really kind of common denominator way, I fucking love Pride, all of that kind of shit. I love a film about strike. I think that is one of the great exports of British culture that has unfortunately started to be lost. And this is just so fucking beautiful. It kind of flashes between archival footage of what was going on in Chile at the time, and these really awful archival shots of the palaces getting bombed by these where the kind of government was getting completely razed to the ground by these fighter jets. And then it kind of flashes forward to now, and these now men who are in this little working man's kind of group pub thing, and they're all still pals, and they all just drink together. It's really cute. But decades ago, they just fucking refused. They were that's fucked up, and we're not gonna do it. And that kind of idea of the power of the worker, and especially thinking about rebellion, right? I think sometimes when we imagine rebellion, there is a kind of big heroism that comes with it, even that sort of idea of Les Mis, which is I think one of the famous kind of rebellions of literature and culture, the idea of the barricades, and there's something deeply romantic about it. But even Les Mis was about a bunch of fucking students, and I think there's something really beautiful about just very, very everyday people and being able to have the power to stand up to a state just because they recognize their own power and their own collectivity. I find it really, I don't know, it makes me cry every time. I think it's really, really beautiful.
Did you go to any of the screenings where Bob and all that turned up?
No, that's really lovely though, did they? Because it showed at Glasgow,
it was the closing film, I think it was the closing film at Glasgow. It definitely had its, I think, world premiere at Glasgow, and yeah, the whole gang was there. And Bob is such a sweetheart. He's he just seems such a mild-mannered guy. You think he's not, but how cool that he just basically brought Pinochet's regime to the ground. Just these guys,
And it's so interesting hearing them talk about it, because they're not even oh, I was trying to do this big political thing, I had like these big aspirations towards. They were just like, I thought it was fucked up, and so I wouldn't do it.
Well, I think what was so moving about it is they didn't actually know the impact, and,
Yeah.
and like there's people over in Chile who are like have like, you know, were like worshipping these guys. In Chile, the news had got back that this was happening in Scotland, and they would have like parties about it, and like they were having discussions about it, but it never sort of got back to the guys.
Yeah.
And it's only afterwards they realised the kind of real impact.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really like moving having them, because they kind of filmed them this like award ceremony, but then also like just them realising, confronting kind of, or not confronting, but like meeting kind of people that kind of explain that, and that's really, really beautiful. But yeah, exactly, that it wasn't this, they didn't even realise, it was just like such a principled stance of that's wrong, and therefore I will not participate in that. It was really beautiful. I've been thinking about that film a lot because there have obviously been a lot of arms factory sort of blockades recently to do with the many arms factories in Scotland and their participation in like the shipping arms to Israel. And I think that's what a lot of those arms factory things are about as well, right? Is it's you as a person picketing outside the factory can't really do anything, but it's about like, if you can make the workers understand their power, then actually it can. And this film is like such a beautiful example of like, it can actually completely fuck a government. And it's like, hell yeah. So yeah, I really like it. I think it's great.
Yeah. I think Philippe's got a new, he's doing the new film, he's doing the Everyone to Camille Street.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they're trying to get financing now. They did a Kickstarter that went really well, so I think that is essentially going to get made as well.
Oh, wow.
So like, I think he lives in Govan Hill as well. So like, I think he probably just lives right in the corner. So it's like, yeah, that would be like another good film, I think.
Oh man, I'll cry at that one too.
Rebellion.
Rebellion.
Ellie, what would you like to chat?
So like my favorite, I guess it's a bit weird for like Rebellion, but like one of my favorite like family comedies is School of Rock, which is sort of like one of the cheesier Richard Linklater films, I think. When you really sort of zoom out on it, it's like, you know, the like really strict prep school where all the kids are a little bit repressed, but they're tricked into doing rock and roll, and then the philosophy underlying the music sort of liberates them, and it's like, oh, so magical. But I actually really, really enjoy it. Like, I think that it does manage to speak with some authenticity. Like, it's not like Kneecap. This is an entirely fictional situation. The kids themselves are not in a band. They're not even actors. I think they were selected because they were just like teenagers that were musically proficient, which probably explains why they're also terrible at acting on screen. But at the same time, you don't necessarily get bothered by it in the way that you do with some sort of like more monotone child actors, because like, I don't know, it's weirdly realistic that like young like guitar virtuosos are actually just awkward, sort of uncomfortable kids. Like, they're not larger than life rock stars or anything. And then there's the presence of Jack Black, who his whole public persona is the like rock and roll nerd, right? So it gives it like a very legitimate energy, a very legitimate passion. There's this scene where, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like this long unbroken shot of like 5 to 10 minutes where it's like he's positioning all of the musicians and like getting them to try out different things, and it's like, oh, you know, try doing this drum beat. It's like, no, I hate that. That sounds like George of the Jungle. And it's like, oh, you could try it on the cymbals, try it on the cymbals. And it's like, it's like kind of wonderful, because like not a lot of other family films that I can think of like give you an insight into like how musicians make music and how they collaborate and how like a song comes together. So it was very formative because I was quite young when I saw it for the first time. There's glimpses of that in Kneecap, of the band like putting together their songs, but that's usually in the middle of like a fugue of like intensive drug taking, and it's less about like their actual process. But School of Rock is a film about rebellion, and it's the kind of like very sweet sort of rebellion I like, which is that all of the characters in this story are kind of like ready to be liberated from the social contract that is kind of like holding them down. Like, even supposedly the antagonist, Joan Cusack, who's the very like strict, very prissy headmistress, secretly loves Stevie Nicks and like, you know, has this side of her that's like quite wild and ready to be released and stuff like that. And even the parents, which are quite like an obstacle because we need to keep these secret rock and roll lessons from them, like once they see the performance in the finale, it's really heart-lifted, it's really heartwarming. Like, they're like, you know, they understand how empowering music can be on stage. So like, really fun, really cute. And then Jack Black did say in an interview, I think quite recently, that like he didn't really care about any of his other roles in the same way that he cared about School of Rock, because School of Rock was such a informative film as well as being like a deeply entertaining film. It does a good job not just of like giving you an understanding of rock music and all of its different angles, all of its different sounds and all of its different sort of moves and theatrics, but it does sort of like show you how I don't know, like unconventional or alternative music genres or like subcultures can lead you to like a more like a wider sense of self and like a more collective sense. And yeah, it's just a really, really nice, sweet film. All of the kids have their own individual struggles. They struggle with, a lot of them like struggle with like feeling cool or their appearance, something that they're too big. And Jack Black's like, well, look at all these other musicians who are like, who've got quite large bodies, but like people don't care about that. They care about the music. And it's just like a very positive, quite like utopian depiction of rock and roll. And the perfect kind of rebellion, which is a rebellion that eventually everybody gets on board with. So that's my pick.
Lovely stuff. Jamie, bring it home. Tell us about some more films that will make us want to go and storm some barricades or start a band.
Well, I was going to
or take down the Chilean government.
I was going to
dealer's choice.
I was going to pick two, if that's okay. So one is like quite an underrated film, I think. It's a Fistful of Dynamite. It's like Sergio Leone's Western that's not really known that well. You've got all the Clint Eastwood ones, which are really popular, and Once Upon a Time in the West. But this one somehow went under the radar. Partly, I think, because it's got a million names. It's called, I think it was called A Fistful of Dynamite in the UK, but it's also called Duck You Suckers elsewhere, and I think it's got more names. Anyway, it's a really cool film. It's like about a Mexican bandit played by Rod Steiner, and I know Rod Steiner's a Jewish man, so that's, if we overlook the fact he's playing a Mexican bandit, that's okay. And then James Coburn is like I think he's like a proto-IRA like Republican, he's like, so he actually got a connection to Kneecap, thinking about it. So he's came from like the Irish Republic. He's an expert on like explosives, and they team up to like do a bunch of like, sabotages and robberies and stuff. But inadvertently, they kind of like inspire the Mexican Revolution and like sort of become like the kind of figureheads of it. And it's really it's probably the funniest of Sergio Leone's westerns. It's like got the best action. It's like the explosions are all kind of, obviously it was like made in 1970 or something like that. So it's all like great practical effects. Yeah, like really fun, really crazy. I can see why it's maybe not seen in such high esteem as the other ones, but I think it's probably just as good. It's, if you like sort of, a Fistful of Dollars, you will like A Fistful of Dynamite, I think. And then just for fun, I was also going to add in, I think Robin Hood is one of the great kind of like revolutionaries, and I think the best adaptation of Robin Hood perhaps is the Disney film from the 70s. As a kid, it was one of my favourites. I think it's like not really liked that much amongst kind of animation heads a little bit, because it's the animation that borrowed like a lot of like animation from like the Jungle Book. It was like a lot of kind of reusing a lot of kind of like old footage and things like that. So it's like a little, I can see as an animation it's maybe not quite as beautiful, but it has a kind of real kind of folksy sort of mythical attitude, and it's really funny. And I think it's like a really great version of Robin Hood. I think it's really fun. It's essentially like a Ken Loach film, but for kids. It's like basically saying, the royals are the baddies, let's take their money and spread it among everyone else. It's a great message for kids. I think it's like much better than most Disney films, which are about princesses and like sort of like fairy tales. This is just like a bit more kind of grounded and real, and it's the kind of social realist Disney film. And yeah, I love it.
That we all need. My auntie used to say, there's like a little band of like essentially rodents.
Yeah.
There's like a rabbit and like a little squirrel, I think, like the little kids that like
I think you're talking about the mice who live in the
church.
In the church.
No, like the little kids that like idolize Robin Hood, and they're like playing with the stuff. And there's like the little one that's always dragging the little like bunny around. My auntie used to always say that. I was like, that one. Like, just be really like bratty.
Yeah, it's a really. I think it's like aged really well. I haven't watched it in years, but like last time I watched it, I really enjoyed it. So
and the songs are banging.
Yeah, it's like these great little folk tunes. It's like who's the cockerel is the person who's telling the story. He's really great.
Alan O'Dale. Yeah.
So it's really good.
I mean, Robin Hood, Fistful of Dynamite, School of Rock, and Nae Pasaran. Don't say we don't give you options.
Do you have one?
I don't really know.
Okay. You don't believe in rebellion?
Yeah. I don't. I mean, there's a lot of things a lot of things I'm accused of not believing in. Let's add rebellion to the list.
The Star Wars.
Well, Star Wars is good, yeah. But I mean, I think actually you probably need to do more of a deep dig into Star Wars' presentation of rebellion.
Although, did you ever see Andor?
No.
Andor is really great, and it's a proper it's really good about actually digging in how you do a rebellion and how the rebellion starts.
Because that's the thing, is the Star Wars is like, it's an entirely aesthetic rebellion, right? Like the filmmaking of Star Wars is entirely aesthetic. The rebels look like rebels, and the Empire are all in a uniform and they're all militant and stuff like that. But you never learn about like the policies, other than I guess blowing up planets. But like, so there's no actual politics in it. But
You can
Andor,
tell
they're
they're
like,
You can tell they're the baddies because they go to the dry cleaners.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones who are a bit more homely, they must be good.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But that's because George Lucas is not like a political writer or even a science fiction writer. But yeah, Andor, they like decide to expand the lore, and like they have the manifesto of the rebellion and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it has all the blowing up and stuff, but it's a lot of it's just like people arguing in rooms about like ethics and politics and how, you know, the kind of rights and wrongs, and like, you know, how like you know, the what's the phrase, like, you know, when like you say, oh, it doesn't matter about fewer people if more
for the greater good.
for the greater good. That's not the phrase, but like anyway, that's that. Anyway, I can't remember
What is?
Sometimes you try and help.
For the many,
Sometimes you
not
do your
the
best.
few.
For the many, not the few. That was.
Is that
that's the phrase I was looking for. That's the kind of attitude. It's like, it doesn't matter if these people get like screwed over as long as the rebellion happens.
They're the same phrase.
I think they
I know.
basically mean the same thing.
But anyway, the kind of the ambiguity of that, and how you have to like not be a good person all the time. Like, to be a good revolutionary, actually you can't be like a pure person. You have to actually like think like the enemy sometimes, and sort of do bad things, which is like probably true. And
But it depends on what kind of revolutionary. Because if you're like a militant revolutionary, sure. But if you're just a man in a factory, not building parts, like there's all kinds of different ways, I think, to have a rebellion.
Imagine if the East Kilbride Air Force had attacked
Tried to get into
Pinochet from the
Pinochet's
other
head.
side. They'd be like, we will outflank Pinochet. It will literally be the last thing he would suspect. Hang on, I don't remember ordering that paint job on those planes. Oh no! That's probably. Someone's already done a film, but an imagined vampire Pinochet we could easily do. We'll call up Andres and sort out an imagined Nae Pasaran sequel in which the East Kilbride Air Force smashes the Chilean government.
I forgot there was the vampire Pinochet. Did that ever come out here?
It's on Netflix.
Oh, fucking hell. That was so stupid. Dumb film.
And on that note, this is the end of this week's podcast. So thank you, Jamie.
Cheers, Pierre.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Cheers, Ellie.
Thank you.
Thank you to Jamie Pettinger and the whole gang at Ground Floor, EHFM's new studio. It's very nice in here, but it's also incredibly hot.
It is very warm.
I'm very toasty, but it's all right because we've just had a lighting change. 2 lighting changes, 3 lighting changes. This dynamic could continue indefinitely. We've been recording for over an hour. Yes, thanks to everyone for listening. Get us on Letterboxd. We're at the CineSkinny on all the socials, at the CineSkinny, and you can email us at cineskinny@theskinny.co.uk. We will be back in 2 weeks' time with more films to talk about. An as yet undetermined number of Disney Foxes and, I don't know, some other military dictatorship from the 1970s that we've got our eye in on.
Sure.
Argentina, we're coming for you. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.